Well, hey there, I am Jennifer Roskamp, a certified life coach and homeschool mom of 9 who is passionate about helping women just like you embrace the here and now while also being focused on creating the life you actually want. In reality, it's not about thinking life will get so much better or so much easier when you fill in the blank. Let's work on creating a life you love now. So let's dive in and get started on redefining Supermom to be someone who is present, intentional, and content rather than perfect in our homes, in our lives, and in our own skin. Let's get started. This is the Intentional Mom Podcast. So there are some basic tools that I've created to help foster some peace and calm in my home over the years. Of course, again, it's like a busy place here, right? So many people coming and going, and so many people here all the time as a homeschool family. And I also work at home. So I've really had to come up with some ways to, in the midst of everybody being here, have some peace and have some calm. And these tools have done that for me. So these tools really, again, allow us to work together, coexist together, be together in the same home, but in a way that helps us all. And the cool thing is that these tools that I've created and I'm going to be sharing with you, they help not only you, but these are going to be tools that your kids will need as adults. So they will help your kids now, they will help your kids as adults. Why not give our kids the tools that they need so that they can practice them now? And by the time they're used to using these tools with you, well, they'll be able to use these so well when they're adults and they need them for their benefit as adults. So basically these 3 tools, and we're going to jump into what they are in just a minute, but these 3 tools are going to help both you and them be aware of these 4 things. Respecting your and others' time, right? They need to respect your time as the mom and the time of other people as well. They're also going to gain the idea of, I guess, an awareness around respecting your and others' autonomy, right? We are our own people. We need our own space. We have our own things that we're focusing on. We have our own responsibilities. They're also going to become more aware of learning to solve their own problems. This is a big one, right? Learning to solve their own problems. And then also learning to problem solve in relationships. How much are your kids going to need this? These are skills they need now, but they are also skills that, man, they're going to need them when they are adults too. So let's jump into these tools. So tool number 1 is, I'll tell you what it's called in a minute, but I'm going to tell you what the purpose of it is first. The purpose of this tool is so that your kids can learn and really coexist with the idea that not all time is created equal. So there are times when you as the mom need to work on something and have the ability to just focus on that with no interruptions. And there are times where you're going to be getting things done and interruptions don't really affect what you're doing. So these interruptions then become a non-issue. And again, as a work at home and a homeschooling at home mom, this is something that I have certainly had to do. And so the first tool that I'm going to share with you is called a level of availability chart. Level of availability chart. That's what I call it, only because I think that's what describes what it is really well. So when you're making dinner, for example, interruptions likely don't matter. In fact, it can be a good time for all kinds of interaction with your kids. But when you're trying to get things together for the taxes, well, this is a time when interruptions can push you right over the edge. Ask me how I know this. So this tool gives you time. Again, when your kids are following and abiding by this tool, it gives you the time it gives you time so that when you are spending time with your kids, you're able to be focused on that. But it also gives you time where you're fully focused on something else. And then there's time in the middle too. So here's what this looks like. And it can be as simple as something that you write on a sticky note. this is a page that I have written, and I've done it on a sticky note too if I can't find my page. But it's something that I can put right on my office door if I would like, or somewhere else. But here is kind of the criteria, the 3 different levels of what you're going to put on the sticky note. These are the 3 different levels of availability. Level number 1, mom is focused and not available. Of course, there are emergencies, right? But this is that top level. I am working on getting the stuff together for the taxes, and I need my brain power. I need my focus. This is something that I struggle with. This is something where I just have to have all of my brain waves going to this one thing. And if I'm interrupted, man, it just disrupts things. So mom is focused and not available. For us, in terms of emergencies, we kind of have this over the years. This is kind of our long-standing emergency gauge, and that is the blood or vomit rule. The blood, yes, I said the blood or vomit rule. If there's blood, I should probably know. If there's vomit, I should probably know. Other than that, if this is the zone in which I'm working, the mom is focused and not available zone, well, unless it qualifies, as an emergency, I'm not to be interrupted. The second level of availability is the mom is working on something, but try to wait. So essentially what that says is, hey, I am working on something, but if you absolutely need me, that's okay. Now I've got tool number 2 is going to work in tandem with this. And so that's going to help. That's going to help you a lot. So when we'll get to something where you're like, okay, but what does that exactly mean? How are they supposed to decide this? Tool number 2 is going to help them with that. So mom is working, but try to wait. That's level number 2. And level 3 is mom is working, but available, right? This is when it really doesn't matter at all. You're working on something that doesn't take a ton of time, a ton of focus. It's something simple. You could do it while you sleep. Mom is working. I'm doing something, but I'm available. So here is kind of how and when you would use this level of availability concept. Really, anytime you need focus, we kind of covered that already, but it's also useful anytime you want your kids to work independently, but at the same time as you, or maybe alongside you, right? Maybe you're working on making dinner and your kid is working at the dining room table on homework. So anytime, again, that you want to establish a little bit of a proximity boundary between you, this is when you would use that. And then there's, of course, the other times where it doesn't matter. You don't always have to be within one of these levels of availability. There are plenty of times where you're just going to be doing this, that, or the other thing, and it doesn't matter, right? When I'm running around doing laundry or taking care of other household tasks, or even sometimes if I'm doing something simple at my computer, I don't need my kids. It doesn't matter whether I'm interrupted or not. This boils down to those times where I really need to limit those interruptions because they disrupt me. That's going to be really when you want this tool. This is when this tool is going to become handy. So anytime you need any type of focus. For me, this is often something that I don't even have to post. It started with posting. But then my kids learned the levels of availability. And in time, I'm now able to communicate them without even posting it somewhere. And here's what this looks like for me. And I share this because this might also be helpful for you, especially if you are a work at home mom. So I have an office, and my levels of availability really are indicated by my office door. So when I am at that top level, mom is focused and not available. When that is my zone, I am in my office and my office door is closed, and I usually have a sticky note on the door that says something like stop or no or quiet, because I might be recording a podcast episode, I might be doing an interview, or I might just be working really hard on something I'm creating. But when I am in my office and the door is closed, that sticky note serves as an added reminder of it almost provides an added visual barrier that helps my kids because it gives them something to read. It even just draws their attention because, again, sometimes it's so, when we live for us, because we are a homeschooling family, when we are with each other all the time and we live in each other's spaces, we kind of just go through, I feel like we coexist a whole lot. And so sometimes even a closed door, we just kind of go through the motions, and my kids sometimes come into my office door without the sticky note. What I find is sometimes my kids will come into my office through the closed door and they will say, "Oh my gosh, I didn't even think," right? And they've interrupted me in the middle of a summit interview or something like that. And they've come in and they said, "Oh my gosh, I didn't even realize your door was closed." So it just kind of gives them that added visual reminder, like the door is closed, right? Do not interrupt. Again, the blood or vomit rule, that emergency situation. So my office door is closed with a sticky note. Other times when my office door is just closed, but I haven't intentionally put a sticky note there, that pretty much means, please really don't interrupt me. This is where we get to the "I'm working, but try to wait" level of availability. That's what that means. Again, I don't want the noise that's happening outside my office door. I need, a real high amount of focus or quiet. So that's why I'm in my office with the door closed, but it's not quite the only an emergency. What sometimes happens when I'm in my office working with a closed door is, for instance, I might have to leave at 3:30 to take a kid to practice. And if I don't remember to set a reminder or something like that, I get all caught up in what I'm doing sometimes, and I lose track of time. And so I want my kids to, again, be able to come in and interrupt me, because at times I have lost track of time. So again, when I'm doing something that would have that sticky note on the door, that's not really going to be a situation in which I could possibly lose track of time. When I am at that top level, it is very structured, it is very scheduled, and everyone in my home is very aware. This is this very important thing I'm going to be doing in my office with the door closed. It's going to start at this time. It's going to end around this time. These are my expectations of you. This is what I'm going to be doing. Please make sure that I am not interrupted. We've had that conversation ahead of time. And I'm glad I kind of mentioned that too, because I think it's a good little tangent to get on. It's very helpful. These tools that I'm giving you are super helpful, but they don't replace the communication. They don't replace the communication. They don't replace that conversation that we should have to let our kids know, hey, this is what's happening. This is what I need, and here's why, right? When my kids understand, if you come in here and interrupt me when I'm in the middle of an interview, well, there's a chance I might have to start over. I've just spent 45 minutes doing this, and now I'm going to have to repeat that, all 45 minutes of that. And so now, instead of this, that, or the other thing that maybe I was going to do with you, well, now I'm going to have to, this still has to be done. So it's very helpful to have that conversation with your kids and to make sure that everyone's on the same page. When you want them to, it's like when you want them to understand you, we have to give them the tools to do that. So know that these are tools, but they don't replace a conversation. I'm glad that came up. Okay, so that's my office door closed, but no sticky note on it. The next thing that we have is I might be in my office working on something. And a lot of times I'm in my office schooling certain ones of my kids as well. Sometimes with the door open, sometimes with the door closed. That's when I might be working with one of my kids who's struggling with math. And again, we have to shut the outside sound out. We have to give ourselves, both of us, myself and whichever student I'm working with, we have to give ourselves the ability to focus and not be distracted. So it's not always just work that I'm doing in my office with the door one way or the other. But it's just, again, it is a visual barrier, or it is a visual that allows my kids to know that level of availability. So I might be in my office working with the door open. And this pretty much means mom is working, but available. The noise, I'm not doing something that involves so much focus or so much thinking power where the noise is going to distract me, or when an interruption is going to disrupt me. So I might be in my office, but if the door is open, that's okay, right? So that's how we've kind of come to visually, how I've come to visually communicate this with my kids. So you might be able to modify that in your home in a certain way to help you kind of display these levels of availability as well. So that's tool number one, that levels of availability awareness, I would say. Here is tool number two. And again, it can work very much in tandem with that first tool. And it is called the stop checklist. And again, I'm going to tell you what the purpose is before I tell you what it actually is. And the purpose of the stop checklist is it helps our kids recognize, and sometimes even ourselves, that not all tasks are created equal. You'll remember the level of availability chart and tool. Well, that helped our kids understand that not all time is created equal. But this helps our kids recognize that not all tasks are created equal. So here's what this looks like. And again, a simple sticky note will do. If you want to get fancy with it, you can get fancy with it. But it's a series of questions that will prompt your kids to solve their own problems and to get creative in who else might be able to help them with their problems. Because we know that a lot of times as moms, we are the go-to. Our kids, it's just easier for them sometimes, a lot of times maybe even, to come to us to solve their problems. And that's not helping us. That's not helping them. Now, there's a time and a place where that's appropriate, but I think as moms, we can probably all raise our hand, or almost all raise our hand, to say, we know there are times that our kids come to us to solve them, help them, when they could have very easily taken care of that on their own. It's just kind of this conditioned response. They're used to coming to you. And hey, it's the easier option. If you're the one doing the thinking and the solving for them, well, now they're not having to put forth as much effort. So that's why we often get in this, and then we get into this pattern. And then your kids aren't even thinking anymore about, can I take care of this on my own? You're just their automatic go-to. And we want to, the stop checklist will help take you out of that role. And again, really just help build that awareness for your kids. So it's a sticky note with a series of questions that will prompt them to manage their own selves before coming straight to you. Okay. So here's what the sticky note should say as you're going down the list. And these are questions that your kids need to ask themselves. Is this urgent? By default, human beings think that everything is urgent. And we want others to treat our thing with the same sense of urgency that we feel about it. How many times have you had it where somebody's expectation has been, and really they're feeling this anxiety about, you need to take care of this right now. And you just are not feeling that same sense of urgency about that. It happens. You probably do the same thing. Something feels more urgent, like we need to take care of this now. You might feel that way, but your spouse might be like, yeah, I'll put it on the list, right? We differ in that. But it's really good for your kids to take that step back and say, is this urgent? And not only is that going to help you in this situation, but again, they're going to have to evaluate that as an adult. Urgency is a big category that can be used when we're prioritizing a bunch of tasks. How urgent is this is a prioritizing category that you will use when you have more to do than you can get done, and prioritizing is needed. Whether or not you realize it, part of how you prioritize things is, how urgently is this needed? Is this something that can wait till 2 days from now? Or is this something that has to happen right now? And again, that might happen automatic in your mind, but it's still happening. And so this how urgent is this grading of the urgency is something that your kids are going to have to do. And look, they're learning this right here in your home, while at the same time, again, helping give you a little bit more of that breathing room. So is this urgent? That's question number 1. Can this wait? That's question number 2. And you might say, well, those are kind of the same thing. And in some ways, in some cases, they could be. But I feel like a lot of times kids just railroad through is this urgent question? Yes, this is urgent. And then they get to the next question that says, can this wait? And I feel like it kind of makes them step back and actually think about that for a minute. So I feel like it does kind of ask the same question, but in a different and maybe even more effective way. However, I think whatever you have as question number 1, kids can easily just kind of railroad through that one. So even if you were to start with the can this wait question, I feel like you would get a lot more, no, this can't wait answers, simply because it's that first firing line by default. So can this wait? Not do we want this to wait, right? Can this actually wait? And as you're teaching and training your kids to use these tools, just make that differentiation for them. Waiting on something doesn't mean it's not important. And it doesn't mean that I'm not going to help you. And it doesn't mean that I'm not going to get to it. It's just simply a question when you're looking at interrupting me when I am doing something, visibly doing something. Can this wait? Just as I would train your kids, I would say, just take a minute, take up to 3 seconds and think about that. Don't just take that initial, no, this can't wait. Maybe it can't. But a lot of times that knee-jerk reaction is going to be, no, this can't wait. But actually give it just a second or two of thought. That's question number 2. Question number 3, can someone else help me with this? Can someone else help me with this? Again, so often we are the go-to, but there are other people who possibly are in your same home or just a text or a phone call away that could also help here. And again, if we have this pattern that's just kind of comfortable and we've been doing it for so long where you're just the go-to, they aren't thinking about the fact that, oh, this person could help me. Maybe I don't need to interrupt mom. And again, we're all talking this is all within the frame of you're trying to get some focused work done. And so you have a more heightened level of availability, right? I'm not as available right now. But that's a good question. Can someone else help me with this? Is a really good question for your kids to ask in a lot of different scenarios, even not just as it pertains to your level of availability. So can someone else help me with this? This is a really good question if you are in a 2-parent home. A lot of times when my kids will come to me with things when dad is home that I know he can answer, simple things, a lot of times my response might be, albeit a little bit snarky, you do have another parent. He's right over there. And sometimes, again, if I am working and my husband is at home with the day off, sometimes I'll even add, reminder, dad's got the day off today, but this is a work day for me. And again, it's just, oh yeah, is a lot of times the response. Oh, it's just that ingrained habit of coming to you that sometimes we need to break. So can someone else help me with this? The next question, this is a good one too. Is this something I already know the answer to? Wow. All moms need to raise their hands right now with me as you're listening. If you're driving, maybe that's the only pass you get. Don't, be safe. But is this something I already know the answer to? All moms know that there are plenty of questions that their kids ask that they already know the answer to if they, again, would have just taken that pause, taken a minute to actually think about it. Before you ask me this question, think about it. And I think some kids too, I have one of these. I find some kids are more prone to asking a question, but not actually listening for the answer. So they will repeat the question to you later as though you didn't answer it, but you did. And so they just didn't pay attention to the answer. So I have to point that out. Like, I answered this for you before. And sometimes when he will come to me, my biggest offender, when he will come to me and ask me a question, I will say, before I answer this, I want you to make sure that you listen for the answer because I don't want you to ask me the same question again. So is this something I already know the answer to? And then the last question is this something I can take care of on my own? And again, the knee-jerk reaction to that can be, no, I can't take care of this on my own. But again, as you're kind of taking your kids through this, I would suggest that you say, just tell them, just take a minute and really ask yourself, you are this many years old. You are capable of doing so many things on your own. And you can even draw attention to it and say, I know that in many cases, and it might seem easier, and maybe it would be easier if I would be able to do this for you or figure this out for you. But you are growing up and you are going to have to get to the point where you are doing these things on your own. You are going to be becoming more independent. And those are all good things, right? That can be, again, we're still having the conversation and you still need to train your kids for how to use these tools that I'm giving you. But this is a really good question because, again, a lot of times it can just serves as a reminder of at least a willingness to try it on their own, right? Maybe that could be a requirement. There are times where I will ask my kids, well, what have you tried? I even do that with coaching clients, right? Well, before you come to me with, can you help me with this? What have you already tried? Because it gives us something to start with, right? We know what didn't work. If you're telling me you need help with this, it must be that it still needs work. So what have you tried? That will help me guide you better. And it also helps guide your kids or anyone you might ask that question of who's asking you for problem solving help. Again, it encourages them to, try this out on your own first and then come to me. We all sometimes need that reminder because all of us are guilty of at times just wanting somebody else to just figure it out for me, right? Mental load, brain capacity, all those are real things. But in our context here, is this something I can take care of on my own? It's such a good question for your kids to ask themselves. So here's kind of how and when you will use this tool. Again, you can likely use it in tandem much of the time when you're also having that focus time and wanting to use that level of availability chart. But when you need to have that focus time, that's when you're going to want to use this. And especially when you're at those top 2 tiers, the mom is absolutely not available except for emergencies. That's going to be a time that you, again, want to have this barrier, this visual barrier for if I'm not available, it doesn't mean that what you have isn't a pressing issue, but maybe it is something that you can actually set into motion of at least easing some of the discomfort, some of the problem. Maybe you can start taking care of that right now. So that's the stop checklist. And the third tool I'm going to give you, I'm going to cover it in the same way. I'm going to tell you what it is, and I'm going to tell you the purpose, and then I'm going to tell you how it works. And this one's pretty easy. And then I've got a bunch of tips for you at the end. So that's where we're headed while we're still here today. Okay, so the third tool is what I call the sibling success path. And the purpose of this is to teach your kids how to manage conflicts, right? How often are they going to need that? How often are they needing that right now? They need it all the time. Why not teach them some really healthy ways in which to do this? And so as the overall structure, this one is a little bit less structured. Both of the other tools I gave you, I suggested, just put on a piece of paper, put on a sticky note. There are a series of questions that go down the page. The structure of this doesn't really matter. You could write this out on a paper just to give them a visual reminder of how to work through this path, or you could actually you could even just put it on a notebook where you actually write this out for them and they can actually fill it out and work on this. So the mechanism doesn't really matter. That's what I wanted to say here. So let me just tell you, so let me back up again one more time. So this tool really is going to work well because it's going to teach your kids that they can solve issues between themselves as siblings, again, rather than coming to you. And if the really smart way to implement this one is to make sure that there's a benefit to them when they do work out issues on their own. And this tool is also really helpful because, again, as I mentioned just a bit ago in a different context, when you follow the path, it allows them it helps make sure that they have tried things on their own before coming to you. Okay. So again, this is very simple. And here's what it looks like. It's a matter of them being able to say, who does this involve? Right? What happened between who is involved? What happened? That's kind of the second column. And again, if you want to give your kids a tool to work on this on, it would be a simple piece of paper. The left column says who was involved. The middle column says what has happened. And the right column says how we tried to solve it, right? And the idea is that, again, before you have 2 kids or maybe even more kids involved in something, before they come to you, they work through this. They need to be able to present you with at least one way that they've tried to work on things on their own. So again, this is designed to help keep all of the constant barrage of multiple kids or maybe just 2 kids coming to you saying, he did this, she did that, right? That's what this speaks to. This is going to help in this situation. There's many times where if they're forced to figure out how to solve it on their own, wow, look at that. Now it's no longer a problem. If the general rule of thumb is you're not allowed to come to me until you've at least tried something, and your kids will know, like, it has to be a decent try. Try actually has to be an active thing, right? It has to be a valid try. So those are all kinds of ground rules that you can lay down when it comes to using this tool. But giving your kids, when it comes to peace and calm in your home, siblings, right? If you've got more than one kid, peace between siblings is huge. And that's why this was one of the tools I wanted to share with you. So let's just jump into a couple of good reminders, okay? It is healthy and good for you and for your kids that you are not available to be interrupted all the time. It is good that there are times when you're available and times when you're not. This really is a good thing. And they do this in school now. They learn how to use a filter. They know when is the appropriate time to ask a question in the appropriate way in which to do that, and when maybe they should just sit and listen for a little longer. And I know that there are times where kids will raise their hand and they will ask their question and their teacher will say, "You know what? We'll get to that in just a minute." Because sometimes kids ask questions, and we all do. Sometimes we ask questions of someone not realizing that the question's actually going to be handled or answered a little bit down the road, but they already have this skill. You're just essentially implementing the same type of variation, a slight variation in your home. So they learning to use a filter is always a good thing. So another reminder, we all have limited capacity in a lot of different things. We've got emotional capacity, we've got mental capacity, we've got time capacity, we've got physical capacity, right? And it's good that recognizing that you're not available all the time allows your kids to recognize that that's true for you. Because in reality, and sometimes I have to remind my kids, look, I could use all of my time, my energy, my bandwidth to take care of all of these things and solve all of these issues for you. But that means I don't have enough left in my bucket for the other things you'd like me to be able to do. And so it's beneficial for you to take responsibility for yourself in these ways. Another good reminder, levels of availability really speak to time boundaries. Essentially, time boundaries are a necessary skill that your kids need now, will benefit from having a more concrete structure of now. And time boundaries also help you because, again, it allows you to focus on the things that you need to do without that distraction. And when we have these get things done time boundaries kind of dividing up our day a little bit, that allows you to be more fully present in everything that you do, including with your kids. That's something that I hear so much is I want to be more present, right? Well, in order to do that, I can't have all the irons in the fire at one time. And so when your kids use and when you use the levels of availability and that stop checklist, and it allows you to focus all of your time and energy on this one thing that you're trying to get done or needing to get done, it allows you to be present in that thing, but that also gives you more presence, 100% presence with them later. So that's also important to understand. These tools also can help build confidence in your kids. They learn to problem solve and they learn to gain a sense of independence. These are all things that help them. They build, again, they create that sense of pride and accomplishment, and they encourage them to be responsible and independent in other areas as well. It's like a win-win all the way around. Another way it's a win-win is that kids value being heard and understood. And really, you're giving them, just like you are essentially being heard and understood using these tools, they're also being heard and understood. And you're giving them the tools that will help them happen, that will help that happen on a time schedule that works better for everyone. They will appreciate your more focused time and attention, and they will look forward to that when they know that the fact that they're not disrupting and interrupting you and giving you the time and the space you need to work on this, that, or the other thing, they know that in return, it can look forward to getting that from you. These tools really just give everyone a better system for that ability to be more present with each individual thing that we do instead of trying to feel like we're juggling all of the things at one time. One last reminder, two last reminders actually, make sure that you give plenty of positive feedback when they're using these tools and when they're using them well. And make sure that you give plenty of time reinforcement when they are following the parameters, when they are following the levels of availability. Make sure that you hold true to your word. Make sure that if you are having this focused attention time where as mom, it's like mom is not available right now, when you're in that top level, make sure that when you're not in that top level anymore, that you've come down to that present level with them. It really helps. And then the last reminder is to pick and choose your levels carefully. Of course, we can't the time that you're at that top level, emergencies only level, it really does need to be, especially depending on the ages of your kids, it really does need to be minimal in order to work. So it's a matter of you also distributing the tasks and the things that you have to do, thinking within those levels of availability. What are your most important tasks? What do you want to put in that level, that emergencies level only, that top level? What are the things that should go there? The things that require your attention and your focus and your thought and quiet the most. And make sure that you're actually doing those tasks then. We don't want to have task alignment. I talk about that in a lot of places, kind of doing things at the right time. Well, the right time essentially means when you're doing the right tasks, when you've got the right amount of brain power, when you've got the right amount of physical energy, if that's what's needed. Doing the right tasks means I'm not just doing the tasks that sound good to me in any given time, because that's what we tend to do. We tend to gravitate towards the things that we like, the things that feel easy, and we leave those hard things. But a lot of times those hard things take that highest level of focus and time and attention. And so, because those are hard things, the tendency could be to grab some of these other things we'd like to do better, but to put it in that top level time slot. So now that you've used up your time for the emergencies only level of availability, but you've got these tasks that you have to do that demand 100% focus, well, now you're really kind of, between a rock and a hard place. So make sure that when you are going to when you are going to be using these levels, that you're aligning the tasks appropriately, so that again you can streamline that efficiency, so that you can have more availability, so that you can have more of that focus. So that is what I had for you today. I hope that you find these tools helpful. Peace and calm really is possible in your home, but you have to have a game plan and a structure ahead of time. You have to have tools that you can use with your kids, and you have to have conversations about how to use the tools. And of course, there has to be some sense of balance as well. Balance doesn't mean equal, but it has to be some of this and some of that. You have to spend time in all of these levels, and it has to be appropriately distributed between them. So that is what I had for you today. Until we talk again, make it a great day. All right. Well, I hope that you found those tools helpful. They can be as simple as a sticky note, and it can be a thing where you train your kids in them and in these tools, and they know how to use them. And maybe then you just graduate to the system where we have it now, which is it's communicated by a door. It's communicated by where you are. But it's a matter of creating these in a way that works for you and your family, teaching your kids how to use them, and giving them that positive feedback when they follow them. That is the way to do it. So in our next episode, we have it's going to be Monday. So we've got another amazingly powerful Monday mantra coming your way in the next episode of the Intentional Mom Podcast. We'll talk then.